Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for our first GP Office Hours webinar of 2025. Can't believe how quickly time goes and that January is almost at an end. Today, we are delighted to have Brian Wilton to lead our webinar today as we navigate the future of GP with confidence. Brian is the president and CEO of LBMC Technologies and instrumental to our organization, providing leadership and strategic direction for our teams. For the past 28 years, Brian has been a speaker for Microsoft, the Kansas City Society of CPAs, the Texas Society of CPAs, and Michigan Association of CPAs. He only has a few more states to go. Brian has a soft spot for Dynamics GP, as he has worked with it for many years, and from time of the Great Plains accounting before it transitioned over to being the Dynamics product. So please join me today in welcoming Brian as our speaker. Thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you, Margaret, and welcome everyone. We had a lot of stuff to cover here in the next, is this 3 hours, Margaret, I think is what we set aside?
Sure.
I think it's only an hour.
As long as you can hold the audience.
Yeah, she's only staying an hour. So we'll have you done here by noon Central Time. So we're going to talk about some key things today around Dynamics GP, or many times I still refer to it as Great Plains, but it is Dynamics GP. So we'll talk about the timeline of key dates. Some of this you've heard, some of it you may not have heard because it's changed here in the last couple of weeks. And so we'll go through that. We'll talk about our commitment to Dynamics GP here at LBMC and the support path that we have internally to take care of everyone. And then what some of your options are for finding another ERP solution, and talk about enhancement. A big question we hear a lot is, should I or do I need to keep paying my GP maintenance or my GP enhancement? So we'll talk about that quite a bit. And then some questions that we hear weekly. And then you might have some questions that we haven't answered. And so we'll have a time at the end here for kind of a Q&A. So because we are providing CPE for the CPAs that are on the call, we have to have some poll questions to make sure that those CPAs are here and paying attention. And so, Dawn, we've got a poll question.
Here's our very first poll question. So what is your timeline for moving to the cloud? And we've got some options for you here. This calendar year, 2025, next year, 2026, and then 27, 28, 29. Give you a few moments. And as Brian mentioned, in order to be eligible for CPE credit, all poll questions must be answered. We want to give you a fair amount of time to take a look at what we're asking and get your answer in. So I'm going to end the poll. And what we've got is the vast majority of our audience just isn't sure when they're going to move to the cloud. Yeah. And we've got about 15% that are targeting 2026, and then 12% for both 2027 and 2028, and 3% are hanging on to the bitter end.
Well, we're going to talk about that, and that's okay. So thank you, Dawn. Not unexpected. We've talking to a lot of people, a lot of our own clients, some other partners that have been in this business a long, long time. And we're kind of finding the same thing is people are kind of used to the fact that they probably are going to have to do something at some point. The easier ones are the hands that are in the air kind of now saying sometime in the next year, maybe late this year, maybe 2026, a few more in 2027. And then after that, it kind of tails off and people either haven't decided or they know they're not doing it in the next couple of years, or they're going to see how long they can stay on GP, or they're just going to stay on GP. And we're going to talk about all those things. So as we kind of get into things here, I grabbed some of these logos. You've been on the software a long time. You'll You might recognize some of them. Of course, Great Plains Software, the company and the product, goes back to 1981. It was a Macintosh product for a couple of years, and then the company decided that, you know, Mac maybe not the best solution for business since nobody in the business world used it. And it seemed like this Windows thing was kind of taking off. And so they had the forethought or foresight to say, you know, we probably need to retool this and make it work on Windows. Well, I say Windows, Microsoft. It was DOS, so there was no Windows. And so Great Plains Accounting was released in a DOS version, and they supported the Mac and the DOS for several years. And then finally, kind of like we're experiencing today, there was something, you know, bigger and better and bolder. And so they decided that the Mac version really wasn't needed to go forward. And so those customers had to move to a DOS platform or to a Windows platform. I think by the time they ended the Mac support, it was Windows was kind of the thing. So anyway, kind of a fun look back here on, and these are in chronological order, top to bottom, left to right. And so thought I'd kind of pull that out for nostalgia reasons. You might remember this WAV file that played. Let me see if you can hear it.
Welcome to Dynamic.
So
Welcome to Dynamic.
I think that was plugged into version 5 and was a little bit annoying, and especially from the consulting side, because we heard it, you know, like 2,000 times a day as we open and close software for ourselves and clients we were supporting, and it got a little annoying. They finally took it out of there. I think it lasted 5, and then in 6 they nixed it. But I have that WAV file. If you'd like it, just send me an email, and if you want to tuck that away into your work scrapbook. Surely I'm not the only one that has that file, but okay. So now the real content of the hour. So this is the current life cycle for Dynamics GP. And so if you are on one of the versions on the left where the big orange arrow is, so 2013, of course, the R2 2015, and its R2 cousin 2016, and its R2 in 2018 and 18 R2. Those are the fixed life cycle. And if you're on one of those still or anything earlier, then you really do need to consider moving to something more current. And so those are getting harder to support. You can see some of the support end dates on these mostly have passed. Everything for standard support is pretty much over. There are 2016 and 2018 are on extended support. 2015 is on extended support for a couple of more months, but April of this year, we might as well say it's completely put to bed and locked away. So if you're on 2016, 2018, or the R2s, you do have extended support, but that's not support. And so that's just if there's a major security issue or something goes wrong, Microsoft will consider fixing it. They don't guarantee that, depending on what it is, but it's under consideration. And 2013, 2015, anything earlier, for the most part, you're already over there. So what has changed, though, is the modern life cycle down at the bottom part of this roadmap. So this the modern life cycle are the 18.x versions. So 18, 18.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now 7 is out here as of last October. And so 18.7 is current. If you're on 6, 18.6, that's good. If you're on .7, that's good. If you're on something earlier than .6, that's also kind of an upgrade trigger. But the change Microsoft made here about 2 weeks ago is all support for Dynamics GP was planned to have an end date of September 30th, 2029. And that caused a little bit of angst because that would mean that there's no year-end update. And so, you know, people running payroll or needing regulatory updates, maybe 1099 form changes and so forth, they really would have to be off the software in 2028 if they weren't going to get a 2029 update. And of course, no one knows what regulatory updates might be out there for 2029. And so it really put a good number of customers kind of at risk because, they could stay if nothing changed, but we don't know that. So they kind of have to plan worst case scenarios. They'd have to really start their migration to something else much sooner. So Microsoft, after a little bit of coaxing, decided that they would go through the end of 2029. So there will be a year-end update for the calendar year 2029, and then December 31st, then that is the end of the support date. So got an extra 3 months here 2 weeks ago, and so that slid out a little bit. And then 2031, the end of April 2031, that is the end of any kind of extended support or security updates. I will say, for me personally, I don't know that I've ever seen GP need a security update itself. Usually that stuff is all at the server level, sometimes Windows, sometimes the desktop, sometimes SQL Server. Those get patched constantly for security updates, but the actual ERP system, it is somewhat rare that it needs a security patch. So the plan is Microsoft, the way that it's worded is they'll hold the calendar open until the end of April 2031, but they say if needed. So I don't think they're planning anything, but if something should come up and there's some vulnerability that needs to be done in the software, they will do it. You do well. We'll cover that here in a little bit. So that's the roadmap. Another way to kind of look at it, a little better graphic, which I just acquired from Microsoft here about 40 minutes ago, is kind of a different way to kind of present it. But the December 31st, 21 or 2029 date is we have to plan for that to be the end of life. And so I wouldn't assume that April 30th is a good date because there probably won't be anything really for them to do with security. So 2029 sounds like a long time, right? We've got the rest of 25, 26, 27, 28, and all of 29. And 5 years could be a long time, but 5 years could be a very short time as well. And so from our viewpoint as your partner, we want to make sure that you don't all wait until June of 2029 to decide, yeah, we probably should talk about this cloud thing. And so, because then we'll both be in a bind, and there's not enough horsepower left in the U.S. to migrate, all those clients that last year. And so the other thing, which is true but kind of comical, maybe, the GP consulting people out there are all kind of in the same age group and kind of my age group, and it's not necessarily young, so I won't call them anything different, but there's not 20, 30, too many 40-year-old GP consultants. They're mostly well into the 50s and beyond. And so at some point, these people will retire. And so that's another reason we don't want to wait until the summer of 29 to say, okay, let's get to it. And, there's no GP consultants left around. So not that we need a bunch of GP support, because if you're moving to something else, it's really those teams that we need the expertise. But the GP folks are still heavily involved with data extraction and kind of helping plan and so forth. So anyway, you kind of get the point there. But the other thing I'll mention that Microsoft continues to drive home the point, and they are actually correct on this, is you are much safer in the cloud than you are on your own. So if you have your own servers and you might have the tightest network money can buy, I would question that. But generally, you cannot outspend Microsoft. And when you have 100 data centers and $1 billion invested into each one, it's pretty hard for any of us to spend that kind of money to protect and provide power and keep the internet up and so forth. And that's the same with Amazon. So, cloud products generally sit in either Microsoft Azure or Amazon Web Services are kind of the two go-tos. And Amazon, a little bit smaller scale, but still, heavily protected, heavy redundancy. And so it's really hard for most companies to have those kind of resources into a data center. And so just keep that in mind that, the safety and safer meaning security, attacks, threats, ransomware, and all that stuff that is, unfortunately, it's not even news anymore because it's a daily or multiple times a day occurrence. And so just keep in mind that, the money they've spent is money you don't have to type thing. So, and the other thing that is kind of a practical matter is the cost to migrate to a cloud product is really not ever going to be less. So, software goes up a little bit here and there. We have to charge more because our costs go up just like yours, and we're seeing it all over. So, every place, personally and business wise, I mean, the costs just continue to skyrocket with, our insurance and our education cost, and people want to make more money once in a while. And so, the cost to do this in 5 years, in 10 years, will likely be more than what it is today. And so, if you're planning a 25, 26, 27, that probably is going to save you money than if you plan it more on the backside of where this will end up. Okay, so the last thing on the fixed life cycle. So these are the products that are off support. So these dates were on the other chart as well, but this one I thought was a little easier to read. So you'll get this deck or have access to it, and so you don't have to really take a bunch of notes on this. But if you're on one of these prior products, prior to the 18 dot versions, you really should consider upgrading. And so now if you're going to move to the cloud next fall or next spring or this fall or this winter, then okay, maybe it doesn't make sense to upgrade and then move. So that's totally agree with that. But if you're going to stay on GP for a few years and you're on one of these, then you really, really want to take some consideration around the version that you're running. So, and the only reason that I say that so much is if we need Microsoft for anything, which is, it's, I wouldn't say it's rare, it's less and less, because we have super talented people that have been doing this a very long time. But if we need Microsoft to support us or help us with something, and they find out that while you're trying to, fix something in GP 2018 R2, they won't do it. And so we don't have support. And so it does leave you and us a little bit on kind of an island out there that nobody wants to be on. Okay, so when will we stop supporting GP as a whole? So if you're on those older versions, even the 18.1 through the 18.5, I might throw 6 in there since 7 is out now, but you really should think about doing some upgrading. If you're on 18.6 and 7, you're officially okay right now. But we are not going to stop supporting GP for another decade. And so we are committed to seeing this through several years after Microsoft stopped support, even the extended support and the security updates. And so we don't have any plans to step away from GP until the end of 2034. And then at that point, we'll have to look. Now, if at the end of 2031, we don't have any GP clients on it, then I guess we would officially support it. But if we don't have any clients left on it, then, I guess we're out of it at that point. But we don't want hundreds and hundreds of clients on it in 2034 because, our ability to support it when Microsoft is not out there, will dwindle over time. And the other thing I mentioned, which is a practical matter, is the GP consultants, and it's not LBMC, it's across the universe. GP's been around since 81, you saw on the slide. So most of us are are on the backside of working careers. And so, you know, we should have people that can do anything that is needed for a decade. After that, you know, we may not. So anyway, just keep that in mind. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to force you to go anywhere before you're ready. So we just want you to know the options. We want you to hear it from us instead of from Microsoft, because they only see things one way, and that may or may not be the way that is best for you. And so because they have other products, that's what they think is a good fit for everyone. And maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. And so we want to make sure that you have the facts and can make, you know, decisions that are good for your company. So Dawn, I think you've got another poll question here for us.
I sure do. Would you be interested in learning how LBMC could host your instance of GP in the cloud? That is a service that doesn't get a lot of attention, but we do have the ability to do that.
So we'll talk about that as an option here, I think, coming up in a slide or two, that's kind of a hybrid, a step between being totally on your own system and being totally software as a service, kind of being in that in-between space for a period of time.
Fantastic. So I'm going to be closing down the poll and moving on.
All right, so actually that question is coming up here. All right, so lots of stuff here. So here are what we think are some pretty good options for people that are on GP, and some better than others. So the first option is stay put. And some of you, I think on the first poll, you were at least in the mode to do that. And so you heard me say just a slide ago that we're going to support you for at least another decade. So you don't have any pressure to make a move, but you do have to consider that you're not going to get any updates here after another 5 years, and that may not be a problem. So that may not affect you at all. But what we've seen in the past with people that tend to lag on much older versions is hardware changes, Windows Server and Microsoft SQL Server get updated frequently. And at some point, there'll be a mismatch between the version of GP you have and the server that it's running on. And so that could that could cause some problems. So you know, I hate to say I would guarantee it's going to happen, but I almost could do that because of past history. And so Microsoft will put out a patch for SQL Server, for Windows Server, for Windows 11 Desktop, or whatever the desktop flavor is for the year. They'll put out a patch that they need to, you know, fix something, and it's something that GP needed, the old version, and now you've got the new version of some little core component in one of those Windows systems. And so that's really what the vulnerability is there. We've seen that with workflow. We've seen that with email, those things which rely heavily on the Windows side of things and are not necessarily GP functions from within, but GP relies heavily on the rest of Microsoft to, you know, move data in and out of the system through email or workflow if you're sending invoices or statements out to customers and so forth. And so that's really the risk there, is not that, you know, GP wouldn't run. That's always possible, but that you're doing some process that uses the rest of the Microsoft family, and that gets upgraded, and there's no patch then for GP to stay up with where that little Windows patch is, and then those things like that start to shut down. So you have to, you know, if you're going to stay put and you're looking at this 10-year period or beyond the 2029 or 3031 timeframe, that I think is the biggest risk, is that something gets done. And of course, we, at that point, no one would have any way of knowing that. And if we find something that breaks, you know, we're not going to be able to call Microsoft and said, you know, tell them, hey, you broke this, so when can we get a fix? That's going to be off the table at that point. So Keep that in mind. But Dawn put the question up about hosting. So kind of an in-between step. If you're not really ready or you're not really sure when the right time for you to look at a true cloud product is, that's fine. No trouble at all. But we've had a lot of our clients be in that situation and say, I'm good with not hosting my own GP because servers are expensive, Windows licenses are all expensive, the maintenance for all of that, all the IT cost around that, you got to back all that up. You've got to keep the power on, the lights on, the internet on, and probably the biggest thing is the security. You've got to keep the bad people out of your system. And so, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that's getting harder and harder to do. And so what a lot of folks have said is a good step kind of in between where we're at. We're not quite ready to give up our GP. We're not quite ready to get to the cloud SaaS product. We've offloaded their GP from their office into the Microsoft cloud or the Amazon cloud. And we're a large partner for both. And so we can find and kind of shop the best options for you between Amazon's cloud and Microsoft's cloud. And we can kind of move your GP system up to one of those cloud environments. And so at least you have the protection of Microsoft, of all the things they're doing with security and all the money they're spending to make sure the power's on, and you've got an internet access. If you live in Tornado Alley or down in the south where windstorms, hurricanes and such are more common than we'd like, at least you don't have to worry about, well, what happens to my server that GP's on. I remember years ago in Houston, we had a client that literally had to go to the office, shut the server down, unplug it, put it in his truck, and he drove it to Austin away from the wind. And so, that can work for a small business, but sometimes that's not a workable solution for larger organizations. And so hosting is an option. You can keep GP. It works the same way. It's your data. We're just moving. It's like getting a brand new server. It's just this server happens to be in one of the cloud locations, and we just move your GP to a new server hosted somewhere else. And so we're doing lots and lots of that for people that kind of want that kind of intermediate step. Okay, so the middle block there on the top is this is Microsoft's one and only solution for you, and they will say this is the natural progression from GP is to Business Central. And that very well could be the case, but it very well could not be the case. And so the benefit of Business Central is we do lots and lots of that now. And so LBMC provided services and support. So it's another ERP product that we have worked with since the inception of the product. And so it's very capable to fit just about any organization out there. The software itself is, I'd call cheap, and generally don't really say cheap when it comes to accounting or ERP software, but it's very inexpensive. Of course, if you have third-party products in your GP system, most all of those work with Business Central. So it's very rare that you have some little third party in GP that there's not a solution for in BC. It likely is from the same company, and they have just retooled the functionality into a Business Central plugin, just like they did GP. And so there's generally no worries about losing functionality whatsoever. Now, if you have GP and you have tons of customization, like heavy customization, then we just have to look at it. Some of that customization may not be needed in a cloud product. It's likely built in. Sometimes it is still needed, and we have to replicate that into the cloud product. So, do lots and lots of that all the time. There are discounts available for GP customers as long as you're on enhancement. So if you have any kind of enhancement plan, you qualify for software discounts from Microsoft. Now, those, they're never perpetual. They always have an end date, but the end date in the past always seems to get extended. Someday they'll probably cut that off, but they know there's still a large population of GP users and customers out there. So they do kind of keep kicking that can down the road, which is good. It can be 40% of the software is discounted, so you're only paying 60 cents on the dollar for the software that's automatically applied because you're a GP customer on an enhancement plan. And it's the software is cheap to start with. It gets even more cost effective if you apply the discount. Even without the discount, if it evaporated, in a few months or a few years, it's still not an overly pricey solution. And then Power Platform. So all the other things Microsoft does, of course, this started with Power BI years ago, and then they've kind of evolved that into this entire Power Platform where you can build entire solutions and create third-party products and create links to other things in and out. And it's a platform, and it's powerful. So maybe that's why they called it that. But you don't get that everywhere else. You get that with Microsoft because they own all of this. So we see Business Central a lot in manufacturing and kind of larger distribution. It really, really, really fits there nicely, but it'll work. It'll do in pretty much anything. So it'll work in any other business. And then the one on the far right is the other product. This is a competitor to Microsoft. So Sage, some of you might remember Sage. Way back to the Mass 90 days. They own Peachtree. They have different names on them now, but those are the products. And so we don't deal with those products. We deal with their cloud product. And right now their only cloud product is called Sage Intacct. And so this product's been around for a long time, almost as long as Dynamics GP. And so it really, really is a great product as well. And we plug that in mostly in core accounting. So people just running general ledger, payables, receivables, doing some billing. They might have some light inventory. They're buying, selling boxes type thing. You're not manufacturing. You're not a, 5-10 location distributor that's, moving millions of cartons of stuff a year. It's a little bit light on the distribution and has no manufacturing yet. That's coming. But when it comes to core accounting, it's really, really solid. And we've moved a number of people from GP to Intacct, and they have absolutely loved it. It's one of the original cloud ERP solutions out there, probably the original, and endorsed by the AICPA. So if you're a CPA, that'll sound familiar. We use it a lot in nonprofits because they've done a lot of tweaks to the system to make it really attractive to nonprofits. We use it a lot in healthcare where it's services. They've got a patient billing system, and we're just integrating that revenue. We use it a lot in construction. So if you happen to be on some kind of project solution, if you're using Great Plains Project Accounting, Winsoft, any of the third-party project type solutions in GP, Intacct is likely a very good fit because it has very strong construction and also real estate. So, real estate meaning if you owned a private mini storage facility or a dozen of them, it's good for that. If you're building commercial buildings and then leasing, anything that goes along with that kind of construction / real estate. So really, really good options there. And then we use it a lot in our business. So the invoices you get from us come out of Sage Intacct. And so it's very good with capturing time and then doing billing, and we sell products. So if you buy a module and then, you get a bill from us to install it and help you learn it and get it up and going for you, that all runs through the Intacct product. And so anyone that's in that kind of professional services area, it's also very strong there. And so the reason we have that is because 15 years ago, Microsoft didn't really have a cloud product or a strategy, or if they did, they didn't tell anyone. And so we were getting pressure from clients to, move to the cloud. And so companies that were starting up, they really didn't want to invest in a bunch of servers and have to hire a bunch of IT resources or sub out to IT companies. They just wanted everything in the cloud. And so, as younger people come into the finance offices, those younger folks, they kind of grew up in a cloud world. And, they've had a phone in their hand, some of them since they were, in first, second, third grade type thing. And so this concept of buying hardware and, installing stuff on the server and having to upgrade every year or so and applying updates and patches, that's kind of a foreign concept to the younger finance folks out there. And so, we got a lot of pressure. It's like, hey, we got to have a SaaS product. And so we went to Intact because they were the leader, still are really the leader because they've had a good jump on everybody else. Microsoft did come along with Business Central and they've knocked it out of the park. And so those are really two very, very good options. Now, some options on the bottom, which I won't spend as much time on, but Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management. So that is obviously a Microsoft product with the word Dynamics on it. You might remember that is Dynamics AX or way back as Exapta. And so that is a very strong kind of what I'd call a tier one product that would compete with SAP or Oracle. You have to have a really hearty appetite to spend a lot of money and a lot of time in this. And so the ones I've been involved with over the years, I don't recall doing anything for less than about $1.5 million in services. The product itself, again, not overly expensive. It's a couple $100 a month per user. You do have to have 20. So if you only have 10 GP users and you said, well, I want to go to the finance and supply chain, you're going to buy 20 and you're going to pay for 20, whether you use 1 or 2 or 20. And so that's just because of the infrastructure it takes Microsoft to keep this going. I know when we used to do AX on-prem, it was about 5 servers to keep it up and running. And so this is a very big product, very, very capable, highly customizable. Could you run General Motors on it? Well, probably not, but anything below that, more likely. So it's not quite SAP, but they're bumping up against the lower end of SAP and Oracle. So that one, those are so few and far between. Sometimes people will see this online and say, hey, I think I need, used to be called F&O, Finance and Operations. Now it's Finance and Supply Chain. Can I get going on finance and supply chain? I'm like, well, we're going to need $1 million to get through the first year. And usually that changes the conversation. And so that one, for most of you, probably off the table, and rightfully so. So the middle one down at the bottom, Acumatica, another decent product. This is pretty much the Dynamics SL or Solomon, if you remember back in the day. This is pretty much the SL product, not by Microsoft. So some of the Solomon folks way back in the day got together and wrote Acumatica. Microsoft kind of looked at it and said, hey, that's our Dynamics SL product. And they could have sued them, but Microsoft doesn't care that much about SL anymore. The support for that it's ended, quite a while back. So they didn't really care, but it's kind of SL flavored. So not a bad product. It's the newest one of everything on here. So they do have private equity ownership now. So Acumatica wasn't doing that great financially. So they brought in an equity partner. And of course, they are highly focused on bottom line, and which is fine. And that's a really good thing in business. So, you got to make some money along the way. But a lot of their decisions, I think, are just driven from what it looks like in the spreadsheet instead of what the customers maybe really care about. So they've been after us to be a partner for a long, long time. Acumatica doesn't do anything that Business Central or Sage Intacct do. And so there's really not a reason for us to have Acumatica. It would be a complete redundancy of what Microsoft and Sage is doing. And so, and Acumatica is much smaller. Sage is a very large company. Microsoft is humongous. And so, those two publishers of product, they can outspend pretty much everybody else on the planet, with maybe one exception, and that's Oracle. Oracle has a small to kind of mid-sized business product called NetSuite. You've probably seen it or heard it advertised on the radio. So they spend tons of money on advertising. The product is very good. It's very solid. Their pricing, what I call misleading. And so, they'll give you a price and that's fine. But the moment you say, oh, I need to add a user, or I would like to, turn this module on, then whatever discounted pricing they might have given you in the fine print, that all ends and everything goes to retail. And so, they're very good about kind of locking people into these 5-year contracts. And if 3 months into the 5-year contract, you need to buy a user, then whatever discount they've given you is gone and everything escalates to full retail. And it stays that way. And you're in this contract that you can't get out of. And so I think that's a bad way to treat your customers, quite honestly. So I don't like the company, but the product is good. The other last thing on there is the implementation. They try to do most of them overseas. And so if you're a person that's okay having a detailed inventory discussion at 3 a.m. your time, then you'll fit right into their overseas implementation. So anyway, those really are the mid-market players. And so, there's competition out there to Microsoft and Sage, and everybody competes for everything. This is stuff you can go find on your own. So I wouldn't try to say that you have two choices and it's Business Central or Sage Intacct. There are others, but there's good reasons that we have the products we have because we feel like we have the best of what is available. All right, so should you keep paying your enhancement? Well, a couple of questions to ask. If you're processing payroll, you're doing 1099s, you're going to be adding GP user licenses at some point. You might want to move to Business Central if that is going to map to your business better than Sage Intacct, or you just want to stay on GP for a good number of years. If any of those are the case, then yes, you should keep paying your enhancement, because without that, then your product is going to be kind of fixed and not updatable. And then you wouldn't be able to do any or all of these things on the screen. So if none of these apply to you and you don't feel like having, the few new features that Microsoft is putting in every year, then you have to evaluate the value of that enhancement versus the features that you're getting. And of course, that assumes that you upgrade and take advantage of them. But these 5 things are kind of deal breakers when it comes to the enhancement. So you're kind of bound to do that unless you have plans and you're kind of actively looking at making a move to a cloud product. So Dawn, I think we are at our poll question 3 of 4.
All right. So here's the third poll question. I would like to explore working with LBMC on, and you can check as many as apply to you, upgrading our GP software to a supported or the latest version, conducting a business process review. If you've never had one, or you can't remember how long it's been since you've had one, this would be a great exercise to go through to get the most out of your software, determine where there are gaps in performance, and see if you can enhance the overall effectiveness of your solution. And if there's anyone on the call that is currently not an LBMC customer but would like to talk to us about potentially becoming an LBMC client, please check that box. And again, we've got I'm not sure if you're not sure what it is that you might want.
Yeah, and Dawn, it's a good point on the business process review. If you are close to doing, making a cloud product decision, that business process review really helps you and us map what you're doing today into the right cloud product. And so you're doing things today with GP based on what GP can or cannot do. You might have some third-party functionality there to help with that. You might not. Some of that stuff, you might have been doing it 20, 30 years type thing. And so it is kind of important to kind of just look holistically at what you're doing and how you're doing it. And that really makes it easy to map to a cloud product, because you know, we kind of have to do that anyway. And you don't want to just keep doing what you're doing today in GP in a cloud product. There's probably a better way, and it might be a whole lot more efficient. And so we want to go through that process anyway. So that's a good thing to do, even if, you know, if you're not, you're going to leave GP behind, you can still schedule a business process review and have one of our folks kind of go through everything. Then we can really kind of help you map to the right solution there. So, and of course, we can help you without doing the business process review. We can kind of help you map over. But if you're close to doing a cloud option, then we, you know, probably would suggest that you go ahead and do that. So a couple of questions that we get asked frequently, and then I've got 6 of these, and then we'll open it up for your questions if you have any. So is GP going to stop working December 31st, 2029? No, it didn't stop working December 31st, 1999. We knew it wouldn't. It was Y2K compliant from the get-go. But no, it's not going to stop working. But, you know, you're going to be on an unsupported product. The larger the company, the worse of an idea that is. And if you're audited, auditors don't like that. If you're publicly traded, that's a big no-no. So, but it's not going to shut down at the end of 2029. So there's nothing in there that's going to time bomb it. So why is Microsoft doing this? Why are they ending support? Well, I think we all know the eyes on the cloud, all their research, all their development, everything is cloud focused. But you know, it's not a bad thing, because they have capabilities in the cloud that they don't have with on-premise type products. And so, you know, they can't use Power Platform with GP. I mean, we a little bit use Power BI with GP, and that, you know, there was a clunky integration there, and we could do some things, but there's just so much more functionality and capability with the modern tools. It's like being on DOS versus Windows. So if you were still on Great Plains Accounting, the DOS product, you know, it might work, but there's just so many things that Microsoft couldn't have done in that product that they could do in Windows. And so it's kind of that evolutionary, this is the next thing type scenario. So can I keep buying GP users if I need them? Well, of course you can right now. So the product's fully supported as long as you're on an enhancement plan. What about past 2029? Microsoft says, as of now, which is Microsoft speak for today, we're saying that. We might not say that December of 2029, but today we're saying, yes, you can buy users past the end of support. So if January, February 2030, you need to buy 5 users and you're on maintenance, you paid your enhancement, as of today, Microsoft is saying that you could buy those 5 users. We don't know what the price might be. It might be cost prohibitive to do that. And we don't know what they might change their mind between now and then. So they're very careful about the wording, and says, you know, it says as of now. And so, of course, that means subject to change. And you have to keep paying enhancements. So if you want to buy users in 2035, you'd have to keep paying enhancement through 2035. And today's policy is they would sell you users in 2035. Now, I'm telling you as a practical matter, I would not count on that. I think they might sell users for a little while, but they're not going to sell users, I don't think, on just an ongoing basis. So I wouldn't plan on being able to grow your system much after 2029. And you're going to keep paying them enhancement, and they're not doing any new features. There's no updates. You're paying enhancement for the ability to buy users, and the enhancement, they've raised the price the last couple of years. You know, we don't know what it might be once 2029 or 12/31/29 passes. We don't know what enhancement might look like. So I wouldn't get caught with, oh yeah, I'm going to be fine for 10 years. You may or may not. Okay, so can I continue to pay enhancement past 2029? Yes, as I just said, you can. That will allow you to stay current. Current meaning you're not going to get anything except the ability to buy those users. So, you know, if we find out in December of 29 that, yeah, we're going to sell users for another 2 years, and you keep paying your enhancement, then that's fine. But otherwise, why would you pay enhancement past the date that the publisher cuts off the support? So, oops. Oh, somebody had a question a while back. I didn't put it up here. They buy support directly from Microsoft. That's probably starting to get to be somewhat of a bad idea, but people did it over the years. So you can still do it. But I would say, again, you might want to rethink that. Somebody asked, can I buy support directly from Microsoft past the December 29 date? No, they have said we are not going to do any direct support contracts past the cutoff. So, so what if a security patch or an update is needed? Again, they've got that 4/30/31 date out there. You will be able to download if they happen to patch the software, which I said earlier. I don't know that I've ever seen them have to do that, but let's say they did. You would be able to download that security patch if they create one, but it's only going to work on current version. So if that was today, that'd be 18.7. Now, maybe 5 years from now, we're at 18.12 or, you know, whatever the numbering might be in that 2029 release. So you'd have to be on that because they're not going to patch anything earlier than the absolute most current version that was released. So, so yes, they'll do it. That's another good reason to if you're going to go down to the wire, that's another good reason maybe to stay upgraded is should that scenario come up. But and then LBMC we talked about. So yep, we're not going anywhere. We've got you for a decade, if not longer. So and then lastly, time for your questions. But I did want to put up kind of the people that you probably see mostly or hear from mostly is Lisa and Kyle, who are the strategic account managers for Dynamics GP, and they can answer all your questions about which product and timing. Even if you don't even want to talk product, you just want to say, hey, 27 probably, you know, will be our year to make a move. That's actually good to tell them because we've got a big calendar on the wall of when people are thinking they might want to move because we want to be staffed up for that on, you know, our Business Central and our Sage Intacct team and so teams. And so, you know, we don't want 150 people saying, hey, I want to move, you know, by the end of this year. And we said, okay, well, you know, that's good, great, but, you know, we can only do half of that type thing. So we're trying to stay ahead of you. We will, but we kind of need your help in telling us what you're thinking. And so if you haven't heard from Kyle or Lisa on kind of timing, you'll probably start getting some questionnaires from us just over the course of this year. And it's not to badger you. Again, we got you as long as you need to be out there on GP, but we don't want to get caught where we can't help a large volume of people if they decide they want to move in a particular year. So, and then Margaret, of course, runs our Dynamics GP practice. So you see her on these office hours every month. So Dawn, I think we're at our final poll question and we can start taking questions, I guess, from the chat or so Margaret, I think, well, Dawn, go ahead. I'll let you talk about the poll.
Sure. Regarding the future of GP, I would like to learn more about, and we've got some choices here, Business Central, Sage Intacct, and some other solution.
And Margaret, have you been answering or monitoring these? Do we need to call any of the questions out? And
We've been monitoring some as they've come through. Got a couple of questions that are related to pricing, like for Intacct versus GP, and we can better answer that in a conversation with the person who's asking. So, you know, the more fits what their needs are.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's one of those, it depends, right? And so Sage, because they know Microsoft has this GP sunset roadmap out there now, we've gone to Sage and said, hey, we got a lot, you know, hundreds and hundreds of GP customers. You know, let's get a deal. If some of these fit Sage Intacct better, let's come up with something. And so they've given us some pretty, what I would say, aggressive pricing for GP customers to take advantage of. We're doing some special service packages so that, you know, those are deeply discounted. And so, yeah, it does depend. But if you reach out to Kyle or Lisa, or if you're not our client and want to talk to us about it, you can reach out to Margaret or even myself. We can kind of sharpen those numbers and get you what that would look like.
And another question, just with regards to particular industries. So, for
Mhm.
example, if you're a nonprofit, if you're a professional services, again, it's usually not a yes or no answer as to which one is better. That's probably a discussion that you would want to have with one of our consultants or one of our strategic account managers.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And I think one of our folks put in here and to clarify that the end of life in Microsoft's eyes, that's the end of the support. In their eyes, that's the end of the product. As I said a few minutes ago on one of the slides, the product's not going to stop working. So it's not that it's going to be dead on, January 1st of 2030. And so it'll continue on as long as there's hardware and systems to run it. It would theoretically continue on forever. If you want to do that for fun, but I wouldn't run a business on it too much after Microsoft has their hands off of it. But yeah, end of life to Microsoft is end of support. So what else are we missing, Margaret? Anything that you haven't?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think we're good.
All right. Okay. Dawn, anything from your side that we need to deal with?
No, just be on the lookout for invitations to upcoming GP office hours. We do this, we did it a little bit differently in January just because of a conflict. But on the third Tuesday of every month, we offer GP office hours, and we'll be talking about Business Central coming up, and we hope to see you there.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do a lot of things like this where you can look at Business Central and look at Sage Intacct. And so those are really helpful to jump on, and you kind of get a flavor for what you see. You would, they're very modern. You would love both of those products. You just see the modern technology in there. So all the kids love them.
Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Margaret. And most importantly, thank you to all of our clients who have shown up today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day, and we hope that you found this very helpful.
All right. Thank you, Dawn, and thank you, everyone. Let us know what questions you have. So we're here to answer.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.